Hi everyone, thank you for all the presentations. I'm Sama from Demo Consultants, one of the partners in D2 EPC. My question is about the nature or the role of the buildings that we have considered in both asset rating and operational rating, meaning that it seems to me, or I better say, is it fair to say or conclude that in both calculations, asset rating and operational rating, we have considered buildings as, let's say, reactive objects. But we also know that more and more with the implementation of artificial intelligence in the energy management in buildings, they can act proactively. So if we take the example of HVAC system, for example, the existing HVAC systems in the building, they're responsible for, I think, more or less 40 or 50% of the energy consumption, which perhaps is 30% if I'm not sure about all the percentages, but I think it's in this range. 30% is like waste. But if there are already AI boxes available in the market that you can install in the existing building with the same HVAC system, and then they basically learn how your building behaves, and then before something happens, they predict. So then your building can act proactively. And I wonder whether considering this kind of behavior will affect the calculations that we are doing at the moment.
Not only the first, but also a very interesting and challenging question. Maybe D2 EPC to start?
Yes, okay. So, Sama, this is a very nice question. Actually, we need to clarify that these projects are about the certification of buildings, the classification of buildings. And the question is whether we have ways of assessing and classifying the proactiveness of buildings. This is a very nice topic, and actually, if we consider the proactiveness as, let's say, a kind of smartness of buildings, this brings us to the SRI, to the readiness indicators of the buildings and smart readiness indicators of the buildings. And I believe that we have many projects that have considered this aspect. EPC recast, for example, or the EPC, or I've seen from other projects as well, that the smartness aspect was considered. I have to make a reference here to another project, which is not within the cluster of sister projects of EPC, the Precept project, in which this is a project for proactive buildings. It's also a Horizon Europe funded project. And in this project, we have developed the concept of the smart proactiveness indicator. That is an adaptation of the smart readiness indicator, which addresses exactly the topics that you have referred to. That is how proactive buildings are. In any case, proactive models are a must. And I would see this as an aspect for future development, especially in view of the needs that we have for smart grids and microgrids and energy communities. So this is a topic that for sure we have to consider for the future, and of course in a similar manner that we have classification of building units, we may consider for the future the classification of energy communities. This is something, or smart grids. This is something that we have already discussed in Smart Living EPC, where we also have the energy community level and the neighborhood scale. In any case, I don't see that in these projects beyond the SRI, the proactiveness aspect was managed in a specific way. I don't know about the other colleagues if they have something else to say.
Maybe I can add. Well, me working with buildings, I can see that a lot of them are actually low-tech buildings. So many of them are not yet there. So maybe there are solutions based on this artificial intelligence, but there is no infrastructure in the building that can accommodate that at the moment. These buildings will continue to be there with us for a long time, and it would be costly to connect these buildings to this artificial intelligence, because then you need more sensors, you need to have a historical data, all of these operational things, etc., to train the models actually correctly. And another question is, what are these AI models are based on? Usually they are not based on physics, so not white box models, but kind of maybe gray or black box model. And then you don't know exactly what is inside because there is missing physics. And if you do not have a first reliable data that you can train these models on, then your prediction for these models are wrong, very often very far away from operations of these buildings. So your AI is as good as basically the data you feed in to train these models. And we are still not yet there. So first we need to secure that we have the right operational data, and then also we have to facilitate the increase of the technology to actually be able to control things automatically, else in real life there are only human beings to control things in a building, and they don't know how to read AI inputs at the moment. So there is still some things to do here, but I see that, or can see that in the future it will enter more into the buildings. That's for sure. But probably this will be first the office buildings with BMS, etc., with all of the infrastructure that is at place there.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you like to react, or from your own experience? Okay, thank you. Then I had a question there in the back, André. Maybe also quickly mention who you are. Well, most people know you, I think.
Thank you, Martin. Really great presentations. André Dizio from Riva and EPB Center. I feel that the presentations really showed that the projects are innovation actions. So if you look at the current policy debates that are continuing in Brussels on the EPBD recast, I think what you have presented today is a bit more in the future. So I have a question which is quietly relevant at this moment in time in terms of verifying the accuracy and the quality of EPCs. If we jump directly to the solutions that you have provided, maybe for the policymakers it seems like a leap, but would you see like a trajectory to arrive to the solutions that you provided, slowly also in the mandatory policy side of things, not only, let's say, on a voluntary basis, because the tools can be already on the voluntary basis be used to provide additional services on top of the EPC. But would you see some intermediary steps, like if policymakers would ask, what is the first thing we need to do in this direction of verification? What would you suggest? Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I start? Yes, I think we need a mid-term for adaptation. So I think all our proposals maybe need adaptation to current EPC, to current procedures at national level at the moment, to prove that it works and really professionals and technicians and data availability of all of this environment is ready. So it's because of that my suggestion of adaptation at national level to current existing procedure and software of our idea or our approach of calculation. Implementing actual monitoring data, utility bills, and other data currently available. It's true also that we don't have all data we need at the moment, because indeed some member states don't have totally installed smart meters, for instance. So yeah, I think a mid-term for adaptation of tools and data availability scenarios, I think.
Maybe I can add on top of the, no. Does it work? Yes, okay. To continue on the data, because, well, the bottleneck for us working with this project was actually to get the consent, to get access to the data. This is the big problem. The data maybe is not there, but very often there is. So in some countries are better in having the data or story of the data. Like Denmark, we have all of the electricity, all of the houses have a smart electricity meter, and 62% of buildings are connected to district heating, and this is by the directive compulsory to have a smart heat meter. So we have a lot of data there, but we need to have a consent to access this data. Every time we want to have a access to this, we need to ask each single person to have a permission to access these data. So if there is some kind of ease that says, okay, if you do some research or innovation that is for the greater good for the society, you have easier access to the data to do the innovation, to do the change. Else we are blocked. This is binding our hands, even if we have a greatest tools, etc. So easier access to the metered data.
I'll try to be a bit more positive in this case. So if we consider the fact that starting from 2002 and the first EPBD, there was a need to align the developments with standards, at least what we can say for the EPCs is that we have captured this reality from the onset, and that is why we targeted a lot in compiling all our knowledge, at least for the operational rating, in a new standard. And we feel that for the new policies that we expect, for the new recast perhaps in 26, 27, we wish to see the operational rating standard being included there. And we wish to give some messages, some clear messages with regard to some developments in the directive, the future directive, for having elements of the operational rating included. So these would be the clear messages. And something else which was not actually discussed today, the fact that the EPC also had some work on the life cycle assessment of buildings. And happily we saw that in the recast we have the global warming potential as a mandatory indicator for new buildings from 26 on. So we are very curious to see how this will be implemented. And we hope that material that was delivered by our project might be useful. This is within the policy recommendations that we also include in the outcomes of the EPC.
Okay, thank you. André, you actually stole my closing question, so I have time for one more question. Mark, maybe if you can quickly also introduce yourself. And
hello, Mark Delhust. I'm affiliated to Ghent University and also a company Scone. I'm not sure yet how to phrase it simply, my question, to be honest. Starting to summarize, we have two extremes. We have energy performance, we have energy use. From that perspective, we have labels about performance, standardized consumption, standardized climate, standardized use, and we have real consumption, which is actually not really regulated. Now, in the project, you're trying to go from measured data to actually, let's say, what you call an operational label. To what extent do you believe into the potential of that operational label, not from an informative perspective, and not only from a perspective of informing, identifying, etc., but really from a compulsory perspective of imposing values? What has happened actually from the EPCs also, started to be informative, became in the end regulated, but the big issue with the operational one, you will never know. You don't know if you have a gap in a wall or if somebody leaves the window open all the time. It's not about calibrating a model, because with a calibrated model, you cannot apply your model to another user behavior, which is totally different, because that would have needed actually not a calibrated model, but an identification of the model, which is totally a different challenge. So to what extent do you believe that an operational label can be used in a regulatory framework not only to be informative and supportive, but actually really to replace what the current labels have become, namely something that can be imposed, checked, with all the legal consequences of it? Do you see a technical solution for that or a legal solution for that?
And a very challenging question to conclude.
Okay, so I have the microphone, I can take this one. Okay. At least to our point of view, and I'm mentioning this as the EPC, we are very clear on that. The operational rating will never substitute the asset rating. So the asset rating has its needs for the design stage, for securing that a building fulfills the minimum requirements of the legislation, and for keeping things on track and making sure that a building has the minimum requirements, energy requirements. So this is one thing. This is the asset rating. On the other hand, if you look around and you just ask anyone, what is the energy class of your building, or when was the last time that you saw your energy performance certificate, the answer that you will get is, I don't know what the class is, or I don't know if I've ever seen this document. I don't know what this document is. On the other hand, we live in the era of Industry 4.0 solutions, of smart buildings, of smart cities. Everything is digitized information. We can look at our smartphone and see what we are currently consuming in energy, what is our PV producing, where do I find, let's say, an EV charger available, and so forth. So in a similar manner, we want people to see, oh, what is my energy class today, what was it yesterday, what will it be in the next 6 months. So we're going to make this a smart information. It's about smartening EPCs. Now, the way we are going to exploit the operational rating in the future, of course, we may discuss about this being introduced or integrated in the legislation in a manner, but at least at this point, these are not the answers that we wish to provide. And of course, we have never claimed that the operational scaling will replace the asset scaling. The asset rating is necessary. It should be there. We should calculate at the design stage. And of course, you cannot have an operational rating at the design stage. And for sure, nobody discusses about replacement.
Okay. A last quick reaction on this from the 2 other projects? No? Okay.
I think it's the same. Basically, highlight the fact that the EPC is more than a label. It's more than that. So we need to provide clear information to end users. So information based on operational rating is additional information, very useful and understood for end users. That should be provided to motivate investment, reformation, and so on.
Yes, potentially also for what we can mention from some of our territorial case studies, it's clearly that asset rating will be the one required. Okay, operational may be also, at least in the short term, not compulsory, voluntary by people eventually to have it, because it requires that you share the data at least. And here open a potential good, and you can say win-win approach, because you share your operational data in some way, you have the possibility to be informed. Otherwise, when you look at your label, you ask people, do you have a label? Someone say yes, someone they say no, but he has the label potentially somewhere in one of his, I don't know, shell of elements, but it's not remind. Well, this gives me more connected to the building performance and help him also in having enough feedback on that. But in parallel, may help also policy to check with the operational what arrives when you expect that this building passes for class, I don't know, D, C, E or F to class A or B, no? And in some way, you have the possibility to indirectly collect this data that in some way are missing. Because it's true that, for example, in Italy, in the demo case that we have everywhere the smart meter installed, no? The one for company electricity, but there is no way to have access to this data. No way, nor for the end user, nor for the owner, nor for eventually, if you are in a municipality building by the municipality, or the large company that manage not only this building, but thousands of buildings in Italy. So this opened the fact, okay, we have it, but we need an extra monitoring system to be overpassing that, or reading the pulse or impulse or something like that. So this gives immediately the idea that if you start pushing or requiring the fact that you want the operational rating, this data in some way come up.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I have a last round of applause for our experts? Thank you.